Welcome to What Catholics Sing with Father Lou Cunningham and Andrew Goldstein. We're two friends who have fallen in love with the Catholic Church's treasury of sacred music, sit down to discuss some of our favorite pieces we've sung, heard, and discovered. I'm Father Lou, a priest and pastor in the Archdiocese of Seattle, Washington.
And I'm Andrew, a husband and father, author of Word on Fire's Musica Domestica, and the director of mission advancement and parish support with the Vigil Project. It's good to see you, Father.
And you.
We're in the same room. We said it couldn't happen, and it happened twice.
Here we are, second time.
Here we are. So good. Today, we are going to discuss a hot topic of should you sing patriotic music in the Mass?
Why not? It's around July 4th, hot dogs, hamburgers, and liturgical controversy.
We're looking for 12 reasons to get canceled, and it'll be all 12 episodes of this season.
It's all here.
It's all here. But first, what have you been listening to?
Well, I figured I'd go out on a limb here. I just had some vacation time, and I was back in Tennessee. And I had the opportunity to... I'm a big Johnny Cash fan. I kind of grew up on country music a little bit. That's how I learned how to sing, was just country in the car with my dad. And so I had the opportunity to go see his house, which burned to the ground. So it wasn't actually there, but I got to see where the music video for Hurt was recorded, and you could see kind of the vision and the view of what he would have seen. And I read a biography on him, which was really interesting because we know 2 or 3 of Johnny Cash's songs that we think about, you know. The one that he really wanted to be known for, which is really beautiful at the end of his life, is The Man Comes Around. And he was asked at one point, and he said at one point, in 50 years, if no one's listening to any of my music, I want it to be The Man Comes Around.
That's so awesome.
What a beautiful testament to this man who really lived fully in all of the human sense of fully,
right,
and really recognized his own need for a savior. But he has some fun songs too that we think about sometimes, not as much. A lot of covers, of course, Hurt being one of them, 9 Inch Nails. And so kind of as I was driving through these different areas, I just listened to a lot of Johnny Cash. Man Comes Around, all of his stuff. He has over 1,000 recordings. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you have over 1,000 recordings of Johnny Cash from the earliest days of Johnny Cash and the Tennessee 2, the Boom Chicka Boom people that were in his little group, all the way up to the last ones where he was with Ruben as his director and his his recording artist, and being able to have that with him in those last texts and those last songs that we have. And then just to be super eclectic, I also really like opera, not Grand Ole Opry, but real opera. And so last night I wasn't able to sleep super well, so I turned on Die Zauberflöte by Mozart, and I didn't quite hear the Queen of the Night aria because I was apparently already asleep, but that's okay. That's actually quite nice that I fell asleep before that, and she didn't wake me up with her high notes, so that was nice. Andrew, what have you been listening to?
Yeah, I've been listening to Corsican polyphony lately. So this is this incredible Kyrie eleison that's in multiple parts, and just the ways that they move. I'm not very familiar with Corsican polyphony, and I'm not familiar with this ensemble, but I'll link it below so you can hear. And it's kind of like challenged what I think polyphony is and chant is, and it's just giving me like almost like a new lens or a new language to experience it. So that I've been super excited about. I've texted that to far too many people, and this ensemble can thank me for making them viral in a very small group of people.
Very niche group of people.
Very, very niche, but it's been a joy to kind of explore that area. Very different than Johnny Cash. We're burning buildings down to the ground in very different ways here, but yes.
Where did you find that? Just on YouTube? Just going through stuff?
It was one of those that came up on my feed. I was nerding out on Voces 8, and it was just like the next thing that played, and I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Nice.
So thank you, Voces, and thank you to Corsican Polyphony for blowing my mind this week. So,
that's wonderful. That's amazing.
Let's talk about a deep question. Father, can we sing patriotic music at Mass?
We are going to get canceled on episode 1 and 2 here. It's going to be the best way for us to start and end. We're going to burn the houses to the ground. You know, a lot of our hymns and hymnody comes from different sources. So I think a lot of our Irish tunes that we have within the church that really come from places maybe not as savory as we like to think some of the Marian tunes from Ireland came from, like bar songs.
Give us like an example.
Oh, goodness. Oh, Mary, we crown thee, probably. Is, oh, Mary, we crown thee with blossoms today. Like, that might have come out of not a pious monastery somewhere in Ireland. But it shows a certain amount of devotion. When we talked about that in our last episode a little bit, of the devotional life and where those things come from. So, when we're singing Mañanitas to Our Lady on Our Lady of Guadalupe, you think, well, but we're asking a little bit of a different question about especially one song that we're all familiar with here in America. It's Hot Dogs and 4th of July. And that would be the America the Beautiful, which does often show up in hymn books. Mm-hmm. It is something that is there. And sometimes it is heard on or around July 4th.
But if it shows up in the hymn book, can't we use it?
Well, Andrew, I think that's more your field than mine. I'm going to give a good pastoral response and say you should probably defer to your sacred music minister. No, it makes us wonder about what is the role of music? What is the role of music in worship? And so one of the things that I've been thinking through a lot is I do want to make sure that my songs are ordered towards God. Mm-hmm. They're a prayer. And if they're not ordered towards God, then I at least want them to be ordered towards the Christian people praising God. Right. Something around us speaking to the Lord and or in some way encouraging us as Christians to do that. I think of the tune that we will probably talk about in future episodes of Sancte Venite, Come All Ye Holy, from the Fortescue hymnal, and the De Brebeuf.
Well, it's in both.
It's in both of them. That is an ancient hymn. That is an ancient piece of poetry that we tend to not hear because it hasn't been put in some of the more modern or mainstream hymnals. But one of the beautiful things about it, of its antiquity in many ways, just because it has this repetitious refrain, which makes it easier to sing for a congregation because they don't have as much that they have to know. And so but in that hymn, we don't hear us praising God per se, because it starts with Come All Ye Holy, which it would have been sung during communion. Think large papal or basilica liturgy where you just have to keep singing because there's a lot of people. And so you get Come All Ye Holy, take the body of our Lord, etc., etc. And then it just has a simple Alleluia refrain, kind of like Let All Mortal Flesh Keep Silence. You can make it do that if you want. And so, but it's one of those that we're not explicitly talking to God, but we are ordering ourselves especially towards the Eucharist. And so something like America the Beautiful, we have to ask, who is it orienting us towards? From a pastoral perspective, perhaps I would order it towards maybe the concluding hymn or something maybe even after the priest is gone, because it still gives us, we are in a country, patriotism is a virtue, and it's under the virtue of justice where we render unto our country what is due to it, right? That's what Jesus says to do, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And so we do have this reality of we live in a place. We live in a particular location that we do have to be aware of and say, okay, God has called me here. He hasn't called me somewhere else. He hasn't called me to Second Life somewhere in the world, somewhere else, in a different country. He's called me here. And so that would be there's my pastoral response. But Andrew, do you have more to say about that?
I have lots to say about this.
I'm sure you do.
Well, I mean, actually, just to say to validate what you're saying, the recessional is such a different moment of the Mass, because it's not within the Mass. I mean, you have actually said the Mass has ended.
Go in peace.
Go in peace.
Go.
So I actually love the recessional in some ways, because you could say there's a degree of flexibility there. And that's why many pastors maybe successfully move patriotic music to the end of Mass on the weekend surrounding the 4th of July, because we can say the Mass is done. This is not necessarily part of the Mass, but maybe more akin to devotion or to a moment of recognizing something good that's happening. So maybe that's a solution and one thing, but there's something deeper going on here, which is is patriotic music, or is music that's not entirely giving to God what's due to God, appropriate for even the public celebration within the church, right? And I really love this instance of America the Beautiful, because as you rightly brought up at the beginning, there's a history here, there's a connection here that ties this to hymnody, but maybe reasons also to use other things. So let's crack open the history for a second, and we can just go deep on this one.
And this is totally new to me. So, Andrew, when you brought this up, I had no idea that where we get America the Beautiful comes from somewhere else. And so this to me was just a fascinating discovery, and I'm so glad that you said, oh, let's do this for the second episode.
Let's talk about Samuel Ward. So Samuel Ward, born 1848, died 1903. He composed a tune called Materna for the text of a hymn called O Mother Dear Jerusalem. Now, this will actually be the topic of our discussion is where did that hymn go? But before we get there, this is the tune that America the Beautiful commonly employs. So when we hear America the Beautiful, oh, beautiful for spacious stars, for amber waves of grain, we're pulling from this original hymn, O Mother Dear Jerusalem. So let's actually hear that, and we can hear the ties, and we're going to kind of backdate the history from there. So this is O Mother Dear Jerusalem by Samuel Ward. O Mother dear Jerusalem, when shall I come to thee? When shall my sorrows have an end? Thy joys when shall I see? O happy harbor of God's saints, O sweet and pleasant soil, in thee no sorrow can be found, nor grief, nor care, nor toil. Now, this is a beautiful hymn about the nationality we have in heaven. It's a Jerusalem hymn. So in some ways, it actually makes sense how, as Christians, we've kind of taken the next step and said, well, our nationality as American Christians is basically a hope in America and a hope in God. But there's this history behind this hymn, O Mother Dear Jerusalem, that goes much further back. And so while we know that tune today as America the Beautiful, where that text comes from is actually further. So let's look back. It starts as a Latin text. I'm going to have you, Father, help me with the Latin. It's Mater
Jerusalem.
Yeah, Civitas Sancta Dei.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
Cool.
That was good. Good job.
We're doing it right. I was educated somewhere. Which you can find in the Meditations of St. Augustine. And though it's there, and despite the title, Augustine didn't write it, but John of Facampton, he was from about 990 to 1078. If you want to put this on a map, this is around the time that Guido de Arezzo is starting to create a system for musical notation. So we're going from a audible tradition of Gregorian chant into a written one. And what that allows is more complexity, more voices, standardization that can be taught over many different regions where varieties of chant had crept up. So this is around this time. This is an exciting time in the church. It's a standardizing time. It's a growth of new tools, all of that. And so this is where this text originally comes from. Mater Jerusalem was likely dedicated and intended for the widow of King Henry III of Germany. It would later be translated into English, and a variation was penned in English by 1593. And then during the Protestant Reformation, a Catholic priest was likely the one who penned this. He penned it under a pseudonym, FBP, which later scholars think meant Francis Bacon Priest. So this text has a lot of history, but you can see how it really tends to accompany moments in the church where there's an identity crisis in some ways. We're discovering who we are. We're discovering what it means to be a united people of God, both in the positive sense of we're building the church through new tools like the written chant and manuscripts being written in new forms so that they can be spread. But it's also in other ways of, we can see how it might have even in the Protestant Reformation been a completely different narrative. We're trying to understand our identity, where our identity belongs as Catholics in this heavenly city of Jerusalem.
I think one of the things that's really interesting that you said there is about Guido and musical notation. I always love the name Guido. I named some kids that. That's amazing. Guido. But we think of these dark ages in the church. Yeah, and they're called historically, or in the Enlightenment bias, I suppose, the Dark Ages. But we see this flourishing after Charles the Great, Charlemagne, whose father was Clovis, which is where the name Louis comes from, is Clovis, that same root. This real systematization, we could say, of what was going on. A standardization, sure, but then a way to build on something that was quite basic, something that was easy for anyone to learn, so that we can end up understanding all the more how we can sing this together. I didn't know either that the original notation for this, or the original version, was written for a widow. And that makes the last line of it makes so much sense. No more tears, no more sadness, only joys. It'd be interesting to know more about that in the long run of where maybe that came from, or was it right after his death or something like that. But we see even her, for this widow and the composer of this original piece, as it were, the original text, that she's placing her hope in heaven. Mm-hmm. We see this especially in the book of Revelation for Easter, that when we come into the reality of who we are as citizens of the new Jerusalem, the citizens of the new kingdom, that's such a Catholic perspective. And in many ways, as Catholics, that has caused suspicion in the modern world for modern nation states. Mm-hmm. I was just at a conference recently where they showed one of the great cartoons, the invective cartoons about Catholic schools, where it was, here's the public school teacher standing in the front of the shores, and the crocodiles coming out of the water have papal hats on, or they have the Episcopal hats. And you think, well, I mean, that seems like a little much. But you have to remember that America, as a Protestant country, really thought that Catholics had an allegiance on a state level to the Holy Father, and therefore we're trying to overthrow the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. A lot of history there that we could go into. And so we see, though, then this Catholic impulse to say, well, I am a citizen of a place, but I'm really a citizen of heaven. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't really matter where I am. Like there's a great part in the Office of Readings that talks about, I think it's Dionysius, yeah, where he says, they're just like citizens. They dress the same, but they have a different purpose. They're citizens of a place, but they don't act like it. They act like foreigners. The line that always gets me, they share the food at their table, not their wives.
I love that.
And you think to yourself, what was going on at the time that's what he's writing? And we just have no concept of that coming out of kind of the Christian milieu. But we start seeing that all the more today, I suppose, as we get further away from Christ in the culture in many ways, that could be a normal thing for people to think about. Not recommended, anyone. No recommendations there, folks.
So, I mean, we have a hymn like Jerusalem, My Happy Home, which is the modern translation of O Mother, Dear Jerusalem. And I think we can see there is that like planting in a civilization of Jerusalem, a civilization of this heavenly people, right? And so you have this text, and we should sing this one too, just because it's so beautiful. Let's give an instance of this.
Jerusalem, my happy home, when shall I come to thee? When shall my sorrows have an end? Thy joys when shall I see?
Let's do another one.
Thy walls are all of precious stone, most glorious to behold. Thy gates are richly set with pearl, thy streets are paved with gold.
You have this longing for a place, both like the heavenly Jerusalem, and there's also just kind of like this heart sense of, this is not my home here now. And it's actually really interesting to me that like then this is the place that America the Beautiful comes out of. You can look at a very oriented, we are praying and longing for God's promise, and discussing the beauty of that in Jerusalem, My Happy Home. And then we actually see in America the Beautiful kind of like the beauty of an earthly promise in a way. We have the beauty of the land and expansion and all this kind of glorious fruited plain. And of course, we ask God to shed his grace on it. But what we're really looking at is a hymn that's, or a song that's oriented to something different than the heavenly place. It's oriented toward the earthly place, right? And so when we look at, what is the appropriateness of patriotic music, or specifically America the Beautiful, in a church, of course, with reference to God and recognizing that it unites an American people and that this is an important thing, without discrediting that in any way, because that is important. I think we can see that like these two things are very different. One is very distinctly reminding us of our eternal home, our longing, our desire for that, and one reminds us of our earthly home. And so like when you're looking at the moment of the Mass in particular, you have to ask the question, like, where do we belong? What are we a nation of? Who are we citizens to? And that kind of answers in a way what the purpose of music and the church is of course we're citizens of God.
This is the reason why anytime I think about where the flags should be in a Catholic church, unless we have all of the flags of all of the nations, to me, and if I'm going against the bishops or anything that they've said, I'll gladly retract this. Just another reason for us to be canceled. But it doesn't make sense for us to have really even a Vatican flag in the sanctuary, because we're entering into the New Jerusalem, not the Vatican. It's not the sovereign territory of the Vatican. It is the New Jerusalem that we're entering into, paved in gold. This is traditionally why churches have decoration and the beauty attached to them. I think one of the things that's interesting about this tune as we sang it, it really makes me think of, we were talking about some of those folk tunes from Ireland earlier, that if you couldn't guess what Catholics sing might come from a riff off of Thomas Day's book, Why Catholics Can't Sing. So this is something that Catholics can sing. It's not that hard. We just sang it right here. Anyone can do it. Your little kids can do it. Your friends can do it. Family can do it. That it does have that folk hymn quality to it that often I think we discount perhaps in the modern era in so many ways, that those folk hymns were folk for a reason.
Right.
They were easy to sing. They were folk. This is not a German tune from the 1600s. This is not Come Holy Ghost. It's not any of those tunes. It has a very different feel to it. It makes me think a lot of What Wondrous Love Is This?
Yeah.
Turn, turn, turn. 'Tis a season to be simple, etc. And there's something really profound, probably even profoundly American, about that type of folk hymnody. In English especially, because the Anglican tradition, or even, the Irish tradition didn't sing because 400 years of persecution, but the English tradition does not have that same folk hymn quality to it. It's going to be a little more, I perhaps would say rigid, but a little more English, we might say. Whereas this does move a little bit, and you can hear, it would be interesting, Andrew, do you know if this was written in solfege first, or was this...
No, I mean, at the time it was likely written.
Is that too late for solfege?
Yeah, too late for solfege. Modern notation, I could see, and I'd have to dig, but I could see that this would be even more influenced by things like the sacred harp.
Yes.
Where you have maybe block note notation that's all about 4-part movement and that kind of that feel of equal tempered voice. This definitely has some characteristics of that, whether it was directly influenced by that or not. And I'm sure somebody will charitably reach out to correct me on that one. But,
there you go. I do think, too, one of the things, the reason why, as we talked about this, and as your book talks about as well, the Musica Domestica, that if you wanted to sing America the Beautiful, as a Catholic, you can sing it.
Right.
You could sing Johnny Cash, too, if you want, right? Okay, cool. We'll do an episode on Johnny Cash, I suppose. But just because it's not sung in liturgy, as we're talking about, perhaps maybe the best place for a national tune would be something at the recession. In the same way, honestly, it was probably done in the church when the king would come in, right? When the Pope would come in, when he would enter the church, there was the Christus vincit, Christus regnat, Christus imperat, not the Pope. Right? Christ rules, Christ conquers, Christ reigns over all. And then, of course, the national anthem that The Rest is History recently did. They're doing the national anthems for the FIFA World Cup. Sweet. They just did a really interesting podcast on the national anthem of Britain, which is God Save the King,
right,
or Queen, depending on who's ruling at the time, which is where Americans get Let Freedom Ring.
Right.
It's the same tune. We just stole it because America. 4th of July, bald eagles, fireworks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's interesting. And And I love that you brought this up, because this is not in any way to demonize singing America the Beautiful. This is actually just to talk about a context in a moment, right?
Yeah.
And so it's to say, like, it is a virtue for Americans to gather and to honor the beautiful things that the Lord has done in our country, through even today and what he's doing now. And that's a value. Like, we need singing in the home just as much as we need singing in the parish.
Amen.
And in fact, I think when we sing in the home, it'll inform how we sing in the parish. And so we can say we have this desire, rightly so, to sing America the Beautiful on the 4th of July or adjacent to it. We're gathered on Sunday as a community. What a beautiful thing would it be if we had a barbecue after, or we went out to the park after, or we did something as a Catholic community that's distinctly American then, after receiving our highest identity in Christ. Again, this flow from the source and summit into the everyday of our lives, even our everyday lives as Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. Shifting a little bit, because we could nerd out about this. Let's talk about this text, and where does this tune come from, and what struck you as we're reading through the text itself, all the more particularly?
Yeah, I mean, so this tune is called Land of Rest, and it's another just beautiful 4-part hymn tune in a 3/4 meter, so it's got that movement feel to it. It's by Annabelle Morris Buchanan. She lived from 1888 to 1983, so it's still an older tune. But what I love about this particular translation is this kind of longing. You have Jerusalem, my happy home at the beginning. But the 6th verse is the one that brings me to my knees. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, God grant that I may see thy endless joy and of the same partaker ever be. There's this final capping after you've described the streets paved with gold and the precious stone and the gates and seeing God face to face, of just kind of asking, like, God, grant that. And man, if there's anything more I would want to be singing within a mass than that, like, Lord, let it be so.
One of the things that's fascinating about this is, and like many poems and hymnody in the life of the church, this only has 6 verses. Mm-hmm. The original, from our little research about this tune and this text itself, it's like 26 verses. I mean, it's as long as the Laodicean for the sequence. And so we have this kind of compressed version of it. And that last section, it's so funny. If you couldn't hear America, America,
yeah,
and there it is. You
right.
could almost sing America the Beautiful to both texts.
Right. You could sing Jerusalem, my happy home.
Yep. And the last line would then be just line 6 of the refrain.
Right.
Jerusalem, Jerusalem, God grant that I may see thy endless joy and of the same partaker ever be.
For the nerds out there, why does that work? Like, we could take like a tune for any metered hymn and like switch it, right? So like we have what's called like metering. So it's like we have the syllables that line up to like a certain number. This one would be Jerusalem, my happy home, 8. When shall I come to thee? 6. This is an 8-6-8-6, I think, if we followed it all the way through. The number of syllables per line. And like you then can take any 8-6-8-6 tune and apply it to that text, right? So I actually really love this kind of exercise, because we could see there's like 2 tunes that we can identify. One is very church and one is very American. And we have a text that fits both of these places. And you're like, oh, it can switch. And it's like, well, that's kind of weird. But isn't that actually cool that like this can be truly like any tune, any text, as long as it's metered, we have that ability. If there's any hymn nerds out there that want to try this out and ruin some really good hymns, go on to hymnary.org and type in the meter of the hymn you're looking for. Look up the hymn that you're looking for and find the meter, and you'll see hundreds and thousands sometimes of tunes that then fit that hymn. It's a neat way to say, even in a church, like, I know this text is maybe the fitting thing for the moment, but maybe our congregation doesn't know this tune, so let's find one they do know.
And one of the things that's great about that, and it shows in the antiquity of the church, the focus more on the words than the tune, is that many, especially of Latin poetry, and then transferred over into the English, is they keep that same syllabic rhythm, that syllabic number. Mm-hmm. And so at the school right now, one of the things that we've been doing is singing morning prayer essentially every morning together. on Mondays. And they pray in the church throughout the week. But then on Mondays, we sing together. We sing the Benedictus. And as I was trying to come up with a tune that I knew that was easy enough for the kids, but it was words that they had never seen before, because it shows up in the Liturgy of the Hours, especially in the new version coming out of the Liturgy of the Hours on Monday morning prayer, week 1 and 3. And there's no other place that it shows up. It's not in the hymn book. It's not in the missal. It's not in anywhere. But it's the same 888 meter that you can sing versions of O Salutaris Hostia to.
Very cool.
Da 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 da, etc. And so as I was looking at it, I thought, well, what can we learn? And I asked another priest friend. I said, well, you sing a lot. What have you used in similar circumstances? And he gave me that O Salutaris tune, which I don't know if it's originally there. It is in Source and Summit as that, along with the chant versions. There's 4 or 5 in Source and Summit. It has it there. And I thought to myself, oh, this is easy. And so we have 9 verses. I have little kids singing about the Spirit's sober drunkenness, being imbued with the Spirit's sober drunkenness. And the first time we had that, I thought, well, they'll figure it out. Maybe ask their kids or their parents. The kids will ask the parents, I suppose. But I was just like, well, why not? Why not? Why not give them a beautiful text that is to a tune that maybe then when we have exposition, they'll also know that tune. They'll see different words, but they'll go, I know that tune. And so I can sing these words, even though they might be in Latin or English, depending on if you sing O Saving Victim or O Salutaris. But I can sing it because I've heard it. And it might bring back these memories of these other times that tune has been sung.
I love that. Maybe just draw us to some kind of close, to recognize that in the liturgy, when we're talking about the Mass in particular, it is an awesome thing, especially on national holidays, to be reminded of our citizenship in heaven. So maybe even other tunes or texts that fit that. I love Crown Him with Many Crowns, Psalm 84, How Lovely is Your Dwelling Place, Faith of Our Fathers to Jesus Christ, our Sovereign King. These are incredible things for us to sing on these nationalistic holidays, because it actually is in some ways the best meeting of the truth of our nationality in heaven, and a reminder of just how blessed we are here on earth.
And one of the things, just an encouragement to people, if you're sitting there going, well, I want to sing this stuff, but when can I sing it? Listen, when you have your barbecue, not that any of us have printers anymore, all of us have smartphones now. And even if we don't have printers, we can just take those things and tell everyone, send everybody a link who's at your barbecue on July 4th. Pull up America the Beautiful. Pull up God Bless America. Don't pull up Johnny Cash. He's harder to sing, right? But some of these hymns or tunes that are in a way that can be sung easily together, there's nothing stopping you from doing this at the picnic. And why wouldn't you want to teach your kids that? Is the only time you want them to hear the national anthem is when they go to a stadium with 40,000 other people? Or do you all want to sing it together at the beginning of July 4th or at some other time? You have these opportunities. You could print out a sheet that has the words on it, but everyone's carrying around a mini printer in their pocket called a cell phone. And so you can pull up that text and you could sing all 44 verses of whatever if you wanted to. It's a great opportunity to do that.
Right. I would encourage you to do so. We are in a modern decline of music making outside of any organized space. And the more that we as Catholics can actually say, we live in a way that's countercultural. We live in a way that's we understand that music is actually part of our relationship with each other and with the Lord, and that's in the Mass, but that's also in our everyday lives. It's why we can start a podcast like this and say Johnny Cash and A Corsican Kyrie both moved us in some particular way, and we could say these things are not necessarily for use in the same moments, but they both hold an equal weight in how it pressed upon our hearts and minds. Do that with America the Beautiful.
Go sing, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You're probably not as tone deaf as you think you are. Some people are, but I'm convinced, and I saw this in my first parish that I was in charge of, really almost anyone can sing. And even if it's just the melody, or at some of my masses, sometimes I think, well, that's a little out of tune. But you know what? Everybody's singing. And what did that develop into, which we'll talk about at some point? That developed into polyphony. That developed into the in organum. That developed into Joe over there not being able to hit any of those high notes, which aren't even that high. But Joe can stay on that note the entire time, and we can almost play around that in a really beautiful way. So don't think it has to be perfect. You're not singing at the Metropolitan Opera.
And maybe with that, this is what Catholics sing.
Amen.